Hello, good evening, all. Welcome to another Jail Joseph Live. This is a four-part series called Acceptance, Imagining It's You, the Caribbean Response to Disabilities During COVID-19. I am so glad to be here again with you another Wednesday. We've been doing this. This is the fourth Wednesday, and I've learned a lot. I don't know about you. Those of you who have tuned in every single week, I want to say special thank you to you for coming on, sharing the live, sharing with us, letting a friend know, interacting on our social media, both on Facebook, on YouTube, those of you on Digital Catch TV, as well as PlayGo. Want to say special good evening to you and thank you very much for joining us every single week. And if it's your first time coming on here, good evening. See some folks joining us. Rosalind, who is one of my die-hard followers, who's always tuned in to every single program every single program I host. So I want to say good morning to her, good day to her, because she's in New York. Hope you're having an awesome day. Also, I see Zoe and Beverly coming on this evening, and I'm so grateful to all of you. If you are just joining us, let us know where you're connected from. Let us know what part of the world or what part of the region you're tuned in from. And let us know something a little bit about you. And we're so happy to have you join us here for the show. Tonight, we continue the conversation like we've been doing. We had the first week, we spoke with educators. Week two, we spoke with parents of persons with disabilities. And week three, we spoke with persons with disabilities. Today, we speak with the advocates. These are the people who are on the ground doing a lot of the work that needs to be done. And I'm so happy to have three esteemed guests here with us this evening. Just before I start, just want to run through a little bit about the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in relation to the convention. It builds upon and works in synergy with previous international texts related to persons with disabilities, and its focus is on respect for inherent dignity, individual and autonomy, including the freedom to make one's own choices and independence of persons, the non-discrimination, full and effective participation and inclusion in society, respect for difference and acceptance of persons with disabilities as part of the human diversity and humanity, equality of opportunity, that's accessibility, equality between men and women, and respect for the evolving capacities of children with disabilities, and respect for the right of children with disabilities to preserve their identities. And this evening, joining us from the island of Antigua, will be speaking with Bernard Warner, who lost his leg in a motorcycle accident, which he left him with, made him a person with disabilities that led him to becoming part of the Antigua and Barbuda Association of Persons with Disabilities. He is a graduate of University of the West Indies, where he obtained a certificate as a social worker. He's worked at the Center for Disability. He's been awarded 2 national awards for community service by the government of Antigua. He's also been part of drafting a national youth policy for persons with disabilities in association with the ministry. His outstanding work in humanitarian services. He has been a successful lobbyist for the ratification of the United Nations Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in Antigua, participating in certified training programs throughout the Caribbean. That's what he's been doing for quite a few years. He is the owner and operator of Caribbean Accessible Tours, which offers tours for visitors and locals with disabilities, and also for persons confined to nursing homes. He currently hosts a TV show, which is a hit TV show in Antigua called Known the Disabled. and that's on Destiny Christian TV. We're going to also be joined by Natalie Murphy of the island of Dominica, who is a founding member of the Dominica Association of Persons with Disabilities, and she's been there as a member for almost 37 years. Natalie lost her sight at age 18, but that has not stopped her from accomplishing her many accolades, including the 2008 Meritorious Service Medal by the government of Dominica for her valuable contribution in the field of social development, and also the VF Inc. 2013 Phenomenal Woman. She has served on various committees, including Disabled People International Women's Committee, the Windward Islands Cricket and Sports Association for Persons with Impaired Vision. She's also been part of the World Council member Disabled Peoples International, just to name a few. She is presenting as the executive member of the Commonwealth Disabled People Focus, representing the Caribbean region in 2019. She is an advocate. Advocacy is centered around improving the social welfare of persons with disabilities in Dominica. And last but by no means least, we have Christine Staple Ebanks of Jamaica, and is, a phenomenal woman and an advocate for persons with disabilities. She'll tell a little bit about herself. She is the founder and president of the Nathan E. Banks Foundation in Jamaica and the executive director of Nathan E. Banks Children Advocacy Group in New York. She is an integral stakeholder in education and disability sectors in Jamaica and has served on various national boards and committees, including the National Parenting Support Commission Working Group. Christine is an author of 3 books: Raising Nathan, Every Life Has a Story, A Parent's Guide to Surviving the Homework Years, and most recently, How to Cope Parenting a Child with Special Needs. I think she has another book coming out, but she'll let us know a little bit about that. You can find her on YouTube sharing her journey raising a child with disabilities. Without no further ado, I want to welcome my beautiful guest on here with me for the very first time. Jill, actually, one of them has been here before. Bernard's been here before. He's no stranger to us. Uh, but I want to welcome Natalie and Christine and Bernard to the show. Good evening, guys.
Good evening. Thank you so much.
Good
Hello
evening.
to your viewers.
How are you guys doing? I feel like I need water. I mean, those bios, man. Let me tell all you something. Yes. Y'all have been doing the work, eh? Y'all have been putting in the time, and I really didn't want to leave out. I mean, I left out a lot, and I don't want to leave out too much, right? And I can say I left out a lot because you guys have been doing such phenomenal work in the Caribbean as it relates to advocacy for persons with disabilities. And I'll raise my water. I'll take care to you guys with my water because I'm feeling kind of parched after reading this. But thank you very much for being on the show this evening.
Well,
Thank you.
I'll raise the mango.
You're trying to make me jealous?
We Caribbean, so.
They give you a memo that I'm not nowhere close to mangoes. So you're trying to make me jealous, aren't you?
No, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to.
Thank you very much for joining us here this evening. I don't know if you guys were following the last couple of shows, where we spoke with persons with disabilities, the educators, as well as the parents. And if you guys did not follow, that's okay. I'm very happy to have you guys here because one of the things that we will, a few of the viewers and the listeners will learn this evening is that your work is what really is what is super important in getting policies in place for persons with disabilities. So you're the ones on the ground, the movers and the shakers, like this, the adventures on wheels, who will actually be the ones doing all of the work for persons with disabilities. So kudos to all of you, and thank you so very much for taking the time out of your schedule. I know for Bernard for a fact that Bernard is super busy, and I know you two, Natalie and Christine, have been putting in the work, and big up to all of you.
Thank you.
I'd like to start by getting to know a little bit about you guys and why you became an advocate. What is the story behind your advocacy work? And I'd like to start with Christine, since I introduced her last. I'd like to start with Jamaica. We'll start from the top, Jamaican, and we'll go on to Dominica. Right? Why
Yeah.
did you become an advocate?
Thank you so much. And again, good evening to your listeners. And I really have enjoyed meeting Natalie and Bernard. So as you mentioned, I am the founder of the Nathan Banks Foundation and an author. But my journey with disabilities began with my son, my fourth child, Nathan. When he was born in 2004, within 9 months, well, quickly I realized that he wasn't developing as he should because I had three other children. And eventually, at 9 months old, we got the diagnosis of cerebral palsy. And for people who might not know, cerebral palsy is a disability that affects all kinds of movement, and all of life is movement. To blink your eye is movement, to chew is movement, to walk is movement, to hold your head up is movement. And so when a child has cerebral palsy, depending on the severity, it really renders them not being able to do a lot of the functional things like sitting and talking and walking without the intervention of therapies. But at the time, I didn't know that. I was just given the diagnosis, my family, and that was it. For about 2 years, I thought he was going to die. I thought it was a death sentence. It threw me into depression. I couldn't find anybody who could help me to understand the disability, understand what to do with him, and understand how to support him as a mother. And so that was what launched me into, at the time, I was having a successful career in marketing, and I stepped away from that to spend some time to understand his disability. And as I understood his disability through research and through connecting with other people external to Jamaica, I just began to share that information with other parents. And pretty soon, doctors were referring people to me, schools were referring people to me, and that was the genesis of the Nathan Banks Foundation, which I formed 15 years ago on the mission to work for the participation, inclusion, and empowerment of children with disabilities and their families. And that also launched me into writing, because a part of the whole confusion that I went through was not being able to find any antecedent literature that could help me understand the issues from a Caribbean perspective. And so I bought a lot of books, a lot of resources, and it made me very angry because all of them were written by persons in first world countries who were talking about the first world experiences and all the services that was available to them, and not having access to anything like that in Jamaica. It threw me into depression. And so I got into writing the Jamaican experience. I got into finding resourcing, knitting them together and putting that forward so that Jamaica and the persons in the Caribbean can actually have material that is more customized for them and for the experiences that we have.
Thank you very much for letting us know about what I did check out your YouTubes. And your videos are, you look, not that you don't look pretty now, you look amazing in your videos. Like,
Thank you.
you look really good in your videos. You look nice, you look good today, but you just look amazing in your videos. I just want to big you up on that, and y'all need to check out her videos to know what I'm talking about. Bernard, you're welcome. Bernard, why did you decide to become an advocate?
I think it chose me. I mean, to be fact, I was like most young men living life on the fast lane, and I got in a motorcycle accident and I lost my leg, and that left me basically helpless for a number of years. And there was a gentleman by the name of Willie, who who died. He was a member of my organization, and that's back in 1997, going on to 1998. And Willie knew my mother, so he told my mother about the association, which I got encouragement to join. I met Mr. Leslie Manuel, Shirley Aston, and a lady by the name of DominicaDigicel. And these were basically the founding members of the organization. And I was just a skinny young man just sitting in the back, just listening to what's going on. And I believe I catch onto the vision, and the reality catch up to me when I begin to experience the same things that they were talking about in terms of discrimination, the lack of opportunities for persons with disabilities. And I believe through the organization, I would have been afforded the opportunity to attend many training courses. That's before I believe we were DPI. We were DPI member organization. We were DPOC. And I had the opportunity to be a part of many workshops from St. Vincent and to Trinidad and so on. And that really led me to realize that I have to really take it serious and own the process. And I began to just learn along the way and just become the person I am today. And I say it's so much more about the experience that I would have experienced over the years. But I just want to say, if it wasn't for people like Mr. Leslie Manuel and Juni DeShalto, Willie, I wouldn't be here. But of course, I believe there was also, at that time, I believe that the Caribbean were moving into an era of advocacy where there were people like the late George Daniel. I remember the late George Daniel. I feel Karen. I feel of Barbados, Floyd Morris of Jamaica. These were the people who you were seeing on the flyers, the posters. They were the people who were really out there, and I believe I catch the fever. And I today I'm doing our thing because, as I said, it's a learned vision, it's a shared vision, and I just continue from the foundation that was built and what was afforded to me to be advocating today. So I must say kudos to those persons who laid the way for me to be here today.
Thank you very much for that, Bernard. And Natalie, let us know
Hello.
why you decided to become an advocate.
Well, at the age of 5, when I started my primary school education, my infant class teacher discovered that I had some difficulties with my and she called in my parents and told them of her discovery. Eventually, I was able to see an eye specialist who diagnosed born with congenital cataract. Although it was a sight impairment, I was not blind. The eye specialist said at the time that eventually I would become totally blind. I was fortunate enough to have gone through the primary school and able to attain a certificate in school living and so on. But as soon as I left school, primary school, and then I went to a vocational educational training school, the sight became worse, and I was taken to some other eye specialists, recommended that surgery be done. Yes, the surgery was done, but instead of correcting the situation, they made it worse. And one of the eye specialists, or the lead eye specialist, was someone from Jamaica. And I had the first phase in Dominica at the age of 17, and then flown to Jamaica to complete the process. I have to say that after the first surgery, it wasn't that good. But the last surgery in Jamaica was very successful. But on my return to Dominica, 3 months after, I came down with a hemorrhage in the eye, and then later I discovered that my retina was damaged as a result of the, and then I became totally blind at the age of 18. In those days, there were no facilities, like we have today, that needs of persons who are blind, visually impaired. Everybody saw someone who was blind as just being able to engage in craft making. And there was this workshop for the blind all over the island. Dominica was no exception. Eventually, I was introduced to the workshop, but I realized there and then that was the place for me. As the good Lord had it, at the time in 1983, a gentleman by the name of Walton Aubrey Webson of Antigua, who was the executive director of the Caribbean Council for the Blind, was going around the island encouraging the establishment of national societies for the blind with the blind at its head. And then there was this workshop we had for young persons of the Caribbean, which I was fortunate enough to participate in, and that was where the my mission as an advocate started, because we were given the task and the responsibility to go back home and establish these societies and ensure that it was owned by persons who were blind and sight impaired and or sight impaired. Dominica is a small country. We did not have so many blind persons around, but at the same time, there was that movement taking shape in the Caribbean and around the world called the Consumer Self-Help Advocacy Movement, which Jamaica had already established. And the executive director for that organization was a gentleman by the name of Derek Palmer. And he was going all over the Caribbean to establish this organization. Teamed up, or I teamed up with persons with other types of disabilities and started the Association of Disabled People at the time in 1983 in October. I was part of the executive for a number of years. I was fortunate to have, again, through the efforts of Mr. Aubrey Webson, to go to Jamaica and do a 4-month course in the Principles and Practice of Social Work. I learned to develop proposal writing. And with that skill, I came back to Dominica and began pushing the movement of persons with disabilities in Dominica. I eventually became an employee, and in 2003, I became the executive director, and I have been serving in that position ever since. It is 17 years.
Wow.
But I have a lot of experience in terms of, advocacy and empowering of persons with disabilities, and which I have never regretted.
Thank you very much, guys, for giving us a run through as to why you became. You all have such different stories to share, and I think you guys were selected with a lot of care, because it's very different. But all in all, the message is the same. You guys are all on the same path, fighting for advocacy. We lost Bernard for a second. Hopefully he'll come back on. But I wanna ask you, Christine. You decided that one of the best ways to start your advocacy was to start writing.
Yes.
And I mean, that in itself is a huge step, you know.
Mhm.
And the purpose for your writing, or one of the purposes, was to help others, right?
Yes.
Also
Yeah.
ahead, and you started a foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about the two and how you were able to marry them together in terms
Mhm.
of your advocacy work as it relates to people with disabilities?
Well, it's interesting. I actually started with the foundation before I did the writing. But I wrote naturally as a way of dealing with my emotion. I journal. So as I was traveling through the journey, I was documenting my emotions, what I was going through. I would document what I'm looking for as I did my research and I saw what services were available elsewhere. I would document. And so I actually started out first just talking. I would invite myself into meetings and invite myself onto committees. I remember being part of when they were the government was just forming the National Parenting Support Commission. And I met the person who was managing that project. We were on a same speaking platform. And I went up to her and said to her, "Who is a parent advocate in this committee?" And she said, "We don't have one." I said, "Who is a person who is representing children and children with disabilities?" They didn't have that as a focus. And so I invited myself to sit on that committee to carry the voice of the parents. And so in doing that, I began to speak a lot. And in speaking a lot, I felt that there was so much more that could be done because I was learning so much. And how do I share this? So that was the genesis of the Nathan E. Banks Foundation. And we focus a lot on doing capacity development and training for government and teachers and parents and community on how to effectively include children with disabilities specifically and children with special education needs who are being excluded from the classroom. So as I was writing, and I would talk, people ask me, "Why don't you write a book?" So when the umpteenth person asked me that question, I started writing. And I found that because I was journaling, that there was all of this material. And so in 6 years, I was able to put out 4 books. And the first one, Raising Nathan Every Life as a Story, was just chronicling my journey. I call it my healing book because I just poured out very authentically. Because the other issue that really bothered me was when I read materials that was written from other parts of the world, everything was so pretty. And it was packaged so beautifully, and they dealt with the diagnosis so beautifully. And that was not my experience. I was bawling out my eyes half of the time. I was depressed. I was just feeling like my life was over. And the impact that it had on the family, I wasn't seeing any material that was talking about that. And so as I was going through that journey, I was feeling guilty. Why am I having these feelings? Why is it difficult for me to really relate to my son? My son was born and I never had any baby pictures in my wallet because there was a part of me that was embarrassed because of the disability, because I felt that I had done something wrong, which is why that would have happened. And so there are all of these emotions that was dogging my tail. And because I didn't know that it was okay, and I didn't know it was natural, I didn't know that it was part of the journey to help me move past that. So these were some of the reasons that really led me to write, to carry the authentic voice. So yesterday I saw a parent wrote on a support group that I'm in that she wants her mother. She just feel like just throwing up her hands, and I said, "You know what, I've been there. I understand what you've been through, but guess what? It gets okay. Guess what? Cry, scream, throw a tantrum. And then when you would have gotten it out, then you get up and you go again, because these are our children and we have to move forward." So it was part of what really got me into writing, because I wanted to carry what I felt was the authentic experience of living with disability. So even my channel is raising special needs, because it is not the disability that causes the problem, it's the resulting special needs that creates the issue for us. So that was kind of how I felt like my son just drew me into this deeper purpose, and that he just drew me into all of these different aspects. And you know what? Today, I just say thank God for the gift that is my son. because he is a beautiful, beautiful child who I call a unique expression of God in the earth.
Wow, that is such a beautiful, beautiful story. And it's your life. You live it every single day. And
Yes.
for you to speak about this so openly and so freely and let us know, I'm sure there are people out there who may be in the same boat that you were once in and who probably saying, I don't think I can continue this. And
Mhm.
you are giving hope to a lot of people who feel like hope is lost. A lot of times in the Caribbean, you find, like you mentioned, the literature that we consume, which we get from first world countries, so to speak, um, paints a pretty picture of of what, and it's not necessarily a pretty picture. It is their story, and
Mhm.
that they're relating. And granted that we call it pretty, it's their story, and we might feel like our story is incomparable to theirs, is not as pretty, and because we're going through all of these hard times. One of the hard times that a lot of persons with disabilities go through is the stigma, like you mentioned, that is associated. You yourself didn't feel comfortable having a picture of your child in your
Mhm.
closet. So you, and a level of embarrassment, and see that a lot. I saw it when I was growing up as a child, with people in my community who had disabilities, and how they were perceived or how they were viewed. They were almost considered like it was something God had done to the person or to the parent, or it was like, oh, that's God's way of ridiculing you or punishing you, right?
Mhm.
In your I want to move on to Bernard. In your case, you had no issues growing up. You this
No, I
Bernard.
didn't.
Ber,
Oh, okay, go ahead.
we're moving along to Bernard. You had no
Yeah.
issues in terms of growing up. This, as you said, it found you. You got into an accident, and your entire world was shifted. And just like Christine, you had your depressing moments, your moments where you didn't feel like you could continue, the moments where you were treated unfairly. Um, but you've since gotten out of that rut. How did you get from, like, how does someone, it's going to ask, how does someone change their mindset from being, I'm sure you were a successful young man in whatever capacity, to having an accident and losing your leg, and now going through depression, labeled probably as cripple, all of the terms that we, so to speak, the terms we use in the Caribbean to refer to persons with disabilities, and then rising above that and saying, hey, it is not because I'm disabled, I'm unable to function. How do
Please,
we?
I see, Joel. I I grew up in where they call the Grey Screen community, the heart of the ghetto in Antigua. I I had a very good mother. My father was basically a crackhead. So he smoked drugs all my life. I could not remember the day that I knew a father as a father. So I was from the age of 12 when I confirmed from the Anglican Church. And going to 13, 14, I knew the streets because that is where, not that I live on the streets, but where I live, the street was like um, less than 2, 3 minutes walk from my home. So I saw the street and I've always been there. And so I had the exposure of being somebody who had to survive, somebody who got into a lot of things in terms of gangs. I were able to do a lot of apprenticeship in training in to make money. And so all those years, I think that I was living a pretty normal life. And only I feel when I lost my leg, I began to realize that life was harsh. I mean, a young man just turning 18, 19 and lost his leg. you know, my girlfriend leave me. So I was all alone. I tried to get work. Nobody wanted to hire me. So I started to cut grass, and on I use a bicycle and I go and I cut grass. But all of this is based on the fact that I begin to learn and I begin to get peer support. And so I was very stressed out. And I tell you, stressed out. I had no hope. I had nowhere to turn. I was on the corner every day sitting down. Um, I have friends, people who were always there with me, who never left me. But there was something inside me that knew this wasn't what I wanted for me. And I mentioned earlier that I lost my leg in 1996, and I got involved in the Antigua Barbuda Disability Association as early as 1997 into 1998. So right there, I began to get peer support. And that was my breakthrough, is that there was an organization that was just formed back in 1995 by like-minded persons, and I got involved. As I said, I never knew anything, but I got involved, and this person cared for me. They cared for me, and they begin to give me the support I needed. Of course, it meant little to me then, because I never realized what was going on. I was just there, just going to meetings. We remember Leslie Manuel at the time, who were the president of the association, and we used to have monthly meetings at the clinic in the Patters, at about 5 minutes away from Miss Emmanuel home. And all of us, we met there for about 10 years, 10, 15 years, we're going there. And Mr. Emmanuel, um, along with Ms. Shirley Astin and the executive, they wrote to, I think, the Caribbean Development Bank, and they got me a scholarship, which sent me off to Trinidad in 2000. But before that, the organization also lobbied on my behalf, which got me a job in the Public Works Department in 1999. And this is after some years of just heart-wrenching stress and despair. And there are times when I wasn't able to buy tips for my crutches. So you could tell me coming from a mic, clack, 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 clack. And I was ashamed, because I couldn't buy tips, couldn't buy crutches, I couldn't buy clothes. So I was in a real depressive state. And I got through that from as far back as 1997, right up to 1999, when the organization got me my big break in the public work department. And in 2000, Mr. Emmanuel wrote the project proposal that sent me off to Trinidad, myself and a girl who is deaf, Wanda Stephen. We did a year in Trinidad at National Center for Persons with Disabilities. And the expectation of me going off, it was for me to come back to Antigua and start a vocational training program to begin to teach other persons with disabilities the life skill I learned in Trinidad. And I came back, and I went straight into working at the National Center for Persons with Disabilities in 2002, where I spent some 5 years there working. But I believe that 5 years there was what helped to bring me into advocacy, true advocacy. Because when I got there, I began to realize the environment that these persons, we were working in, and there were no resources. The building was old, moldy. It was just nothing. We were just in dirt, and that led me to begin to write. I began to write articles because I've learned the skill in Trinidad. I've been trained by ILO. I've learned the skill, and of course, being a part of an organization and being not a government entity, I felt as if I could have just advocate. And I wrote a lot of articles weekly. I write an article per week, and then the secretary of the organization of the center, who was Miss Valerie Davis, used to edit my articles because I could write, but it editing, and she would edit it, and then we begin to publish them weekly. And that really start the whole advocacy for me in terms of advocating for persons with disabilities. And out of that, I begin to work with the Ministry of Youth Affairs, where we drafted the first National Youth Policy of Antigua Barbuda, which my job was to ensure that in every aspect of the policy, persons with disabilities were included and mentioned. And so what is going on now with me as an advocate is that my early years, I was captured early by the organization. I was provided with peer support. I was provided with an opportunity. And that is why it is so important that I don't know if I can tell my story as well as I should, but what I do know is that as an organization, I have continued the very same thing that I've learned then. And as you've seen from my Facebook page, I have not stopped. I continue to do the things I'm doing today because I knew that this is what is going to keep us going as an organization. We would have to reach out to help people. We have to do the projects. And so that's what have made me who I am today. And it's all because of an organization. It's because of people who had believed in me, who had given me an opportunity. And I just said, this is the way to go. And if we continue to do that, then we're going to have a bright future, and we're going to be able to see change in our society for persons with disabilities.
Bernard, that's an amazing story. That's a testimony. That's not just a story, you know. And it shows, you know, the story tells a lot about people offering their assistance and helping. And as a result of the help that you received, you continue to help others who may be in the worst situation than you were, and get them to a place where they can get help or get assistance. They can have things done for them, and you should be appreciated constantly, especially in Antigua, because we'll talk a little bit about some of the steps that you've made, with all the things that you've actually action that you actually had implemented in your island, and some islands still don't have it, right, Christine?
Yeah, yeah.
Some islands, bigger islands, are actually unable to meet that those policies that were set in place by the United Nations, and you've been getting that done in Antigua, but you're not the only one who's getting work done. Natalie's also getting work done in Dominica, and it's amazing. I mean, I've witnessed Natalie in Roseau, in the streets of Roseau, walk in. I've witnessed her she pushing a wheelchair. Natalie, tell us the story behind you pushing a wheelchair. Why do you push a wheelchair, Natalie?
Do I push a wheelchair, or why was I pushing a wheelchair? Well, okay. Well, I have to say that I drew my strength in becoming an advocate from other persons with disabilities around the region. First, it started in Trinidad with blind youth, when I discovered that these persons have been so successful in their various fields. Some of them knew Braille, some of them could type, some of them were involved in music and other areas. So I resolved there and then that I too was going to ensure that I contributed to the development of persons with disabilities by being part of the movement when it started in 1983. The person who started the movement, the pioneer in Dominica, was a gentleman by the name of Reginald Roll, and he was a wheelchair user. And as it happened, he fell in love with me, so he was a wheelchair user. I am blind. We got married in 1990, and we used to say, He is my eyes and I am his legs. So that is
Yes.
why I am guess. I guess that is why you
A
I was
beautiful story.
yes, yes. And you I mean I have to say that when we got married in 1990, there was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of really unflattering, unsavory remarks
Wow.
made by society. My family was not in favor. It was
Mm.
hard, but we persevered. And we became a peer that championed the cause of persons with disabilities. And we did that together for 13 years, but being married, but 20 years. So, with the establishment of the organization. But on the day of that wedding, I don't think there has been a church that has ever had so many uninvited guests as we had on that day because people were so curious. People were some were, as I said, a lot of opposition, some were in favor, some were happy, but that I think was a breaking ground for many persons with disabilities, not only in Dominica, in other parts of the Caribbean, because eventually persons with disabilities found their partners, found their wives, their husbands, and I take
Trendsetter.
pride in knowing that I take pride in knowing that I really blazed the trail. I was about one to blaze the trail, and those people who knew my husband then will tell you that he was a nonsense man because he was a militant person, he was an outspoken person, he was a fearless person, and he was passionate um, in what he was doing because he really fought for the cause of persons with disabilities. He also assisted in the establishment of the Antigua organization. But when I speak about Leslie Emmanuel, Leslie is my friend. Leslie has been my friend and a part of us for a very long time. So we assisted in the organization there in Antigua. So I decided that um, for me to be a stronger advocate, I had to acquire skills. I did not know Braille. I had friends who started teaching me Braille. I eventually followed correspondence courses from the Hadley School for the Blind. I did secretarial programs. I did typing programs. I followed the leadership development program in the organized by the Youth Development Division in Dominica because I realized involved a lot of public speaking, and you had to have the knowledge, the skills, the ability to be able to go out there and speak and to get people to listen to you and to influence others. And we in Dominica, we in the disability movement in particular, we are very fortunate to have a media on our side because the media will follow us where we go. They carry our press conferences, they carry our news releases, so they help us in building our organization. Our educational campaigns were supported. We went across the island. We just, got people on board and help them to understand that being someone with a disability, living in disability, is not the end of the world. You have abilities, you have skills, you can contribute. And I am very, very, very proud of the achievements that we have had in Dominica. I have seen the progress of many persons with disabilities. Last week you had Lowick Charles. Lowick has been part of our system as a child. Anne Marie, you had last week. Anne Marie has been with the organization, working with me in office for a number of years. I am our major achievement, I have to say, was when our government ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and that all had to do on our advocacy, our activism, and our determination to lead and to let our voices be heard, as the movement slogan is a voice of our own, and we also nothing about us without us. So yes, we have come a long way, and I'm just getting prepared for my retirement. And
Natalie,
and I,
you don't skip a bit. You don't skip a bit. No room for breathing. No room for breathing. Thank you so very much for sharing your love story with us. I did not, to be quite
I didn't
honest,
say all, you know. I didn't say all. Um, I am blind, but I have been married twice, and there have been no disabled persons who have never had one. My present, oh, my present husband is also blind. Yeah, I don't have any kids, but I have a lot of children in the disability movement in Dominica and around around the world.
Natalie, you are one hot number. Thank you so very much for sharing that with us. I didn't know the details of your story, to be honest,
Oh,
because your bio did not say that. But I do recall as a child, remember seeing you walking in Roseau. I remember my parents pointing you out and telling us who you were, and just knowing that that person that you were pushing was their husband. And I was like, it would be interesting to know why she pushes that wheelchair, to let the world know why she was then pushing that wheelchair.
yeah,
And you,
magazines have been written about us. There's a book written about me by a Catholic priest in Dominica called Treasure in Our Midst.
wow, wow,
Wow.
Natalie, you are amazing. You are amazing. Moving to Christine. Christine, I'm interested to know about some of the work that you do. Besides your book, you do quite a bit of work, and one of it is your tireless efforts to get your government to roll along with the flow of the convention, that the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, as it relates to the ratification of the UN Convention
Right.
on Persons with Disabilities.
Right.
What sort of, give us a little rundown as to the type of work that you're doing. As
Okay. All right. I just also wanted to point out that Jamaica is the first country in the world to sign and ratify the Convention of Rights, and it was signed on Jamaica's behalf by Senator Floyd Morris, who is blind and is a member of parliament and has done quite a bit of work to ease the platform for persons like me to be able to do the work. But through the foundation, we focus on the inclusion of children, because what we found was the issues of disabilities were so vast that it is the adult issues that was always making it to the fore, one. Secondly, what we found as well, the majority of children were not in school, they were not getting any kind of services, and we chose to enter the disability field through that. We do quite a bit of work. We've done a body of training with the Ministry of Education on including children with disabilities or special needs in mainstream classroom, because we recognize that there cannot be separate systems of education, especially when we don't have the resources. So our work is to really help to facilitate the inclusion of children with disabilities and support to their families so that they can access their human rights, they can access the right to protection, right to an education. We work a lot in helping to build the practice of inclusion. And so we've done a body of work with one of our children's home that has a lot of children with disabilities, and the children were having a lot of health issues. We went in, worked with the caregivers to help them to understand how to properly train, engage, and stimulate the children so as to reduce the incidence of deaths that was occurring for some of the cases. So we do a lot of work with the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, which is formerly the Child Development Agency. And we also do a lot of work with parents, because we found the parents' voices are mute. Parents are not talking, they're not sharing what their issues are. And so we do a lot of awareness to connect parents to resources, to empower them to be able to have a conversation about the needs of their child. Because we say to them, if nobody knows your child exists, if they don't understand the struggles that you're having, if they don't understand what support you need, then no service can be built out. And so a lot of the work of the Nathan Evans Foundation has been to build those practices and to put literature out there. So we have 2 publications on our website. One of them in particular focuses on emergency management and disaster preparedness for persons with disabilities, because we found that there was not a response within our government systems to be able to adequately handle persons with disabilities in case of disasters and emergency. And COVID has really been one of those emergency situations, that health situation that has really showed up the lack of support and planning, and the lack of understanding of the needs of people with disabilities generally, but in particularly children with disabilities. And so a lot of the work that we do is to really uncover those experiences and to represent them through the different agencies, whether it is the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Education, or in our case, disabilities handled through the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. And we do a lot of work with the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities as a resource partner to really help us to build out inclusive practices that will honor and respect the inherent rights and dignity of children in particular, but adults with disabilities.
Christine, on COVID and the impact of COVID on your island in terms of disabilities, which is what you really advocate for. Tell us a little bit about how COVID impacted, and what were some of the things that you were able to put in place as it relates to that?
So COVID impacted us first and foremost. We were one of the first set to go into social distancing, because our children and persons with disabilities were now in the high risk group because they had prevailing conditions. And so what occurred for a lot of parents was isolation, because they were used to going out to work and some of the children would go out to school, but that was no longer the case. Many of the parents were single parents, and so they had no other support systems around them. And as a result, when they went in, they were in. So if they ran out of something very simple or ran out of something very essential like oxygen for a child, it was difficult for them to get access to that. So what we did through the foundation was to have conversations with the different government entities to draw in the voice of parents. There are several support groups that we had. So we were connecting information and connecting parents to resources, putting parents who were isolated into groups within their communities so that they could have access to information. We also spoke to the different authorities about creating COVID-specific messages for persons with disabilities, because while Jamaica did a great job of the updates and providing COVID-related information, it was not really specific to persons with disabilities, and the conditions were not the same. And so we represented to the various organizations to ensure that there were messages that were being put forward. And I'm very happy to say that there was a lot of response. The Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, along with UNICEF Jamaica, created a whole bunch of resources that was really targeting children in particular, but adults with disabilities, in terms of breaking down the COVID messaging and helping them to understand. We also supported families in connecting to the care packages and help that Jamaica was providing at the time. And so that for us was not enough, though, because we believe that there is more that is needed to be done to ensure that persons with disabilities in Jamaica and around the region, people know where they are, that your emergency services know where they are, understand how to connect with them, understanding in case of an evacuation, what the needs are, in case of like what happened where a lot of parents were isolated with their children, that there is some kind of support system that is able to go into them. So there is a lot that COVID has taught us, which now, once the dust has settled, we need to sit down as advocates and we need to sit down as government and have one conversation about how we can close those gaps.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Speaking along the lines of COVID, I want to move the conversation across to Bernard and how you were able, because Bernard to this day is still on the road delivering care packages to people in various communities. Bernard, how are you able to rally, to put together people? Today you were on a bus with your crew, going out to your communities, and collecting data as it relates to who is in need of help, and bringing them care packages. How are you able to do all of this? Like how do you do it? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bernard.
Love and commitment to the cause. Let me tell you, the COVID-19 has perhaps caught all of us off guard within the disability community. And what we found within the Caribbean, even as I'm aware that we have an organization called Disabled People International North America and the Caribbean, it was we found that there were little to no information going out about what it was going on among persons with disabilities within the Caribbean. And in Antigua, the first thing that we did is that when we heard about the pandemic and the country was going into a lockdown, we wrote to the Honorable Samantha Marshall, who was the then Minister of Social Transformation, outlining, I think, several areas of concern and requests we need the government to meet to address the issue of persons with disabilities, which would have include food, water, cooking gas, toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and so on. And at that time, the government did not take our concern seriously. So, and I'm also an employee within the same ministry, and I work with the same ministry as the person responsible for person with disability. And I said, I'm not having none of that. So I took the same letter to the media and I shared with a reporter by the name of Carl Joseph. I mean, he died maybe a month or two back. And the Carl Joseph published the article, which that article was also shared with the Same People International, that I could tell you that has started the Caribbean tsunami of advocacy, which sparked the movement where we begin to see the drive for greater awareness with disability within the Caribbean. Out of that article, our good friend or colleague, Dr. Glenville Liburd, out of St. Kitts, started the Caribbean Disability Leaders Group. That's around the same time that the letter came out, which brought together over 200 persons with disability together on a platform that is still active today. And that was the only medium that was sharing information collectively throughout the region for persons with disabilities. However, during that time, the government started providing food bags for people with disability, people generally in Antigua, and they had made available some 50 packages per person with disability. Of course, again, I work in the ministry, and we were called in to collect our packages. When I went from up, I realized that the packages was less than half of what been given out generally to the community. And again, I raised my concern publicly to the media, which sparked a bit of
You like to make
media. But I mean, you see, I'm a grassroots advocate, and what I have found in the Caribbean, and I'm going to go back to the COVID-19, is that our disability leaders has somewhat become diplomats in their own rights. We have moved away from a people movement to a leader movement. And that is why within the disability community, there's so much poverty, so much despair, so much neglect, because the grassroots movement has died among the mainstream organizations. And so our process is to bring back people power, where people now begin to see themselves as shakers within the movement, and not just to always hearing a leader like Bernard or Natalie or so on talking, but the ordinary people within the movement and the Caribbean, both attached and unattached people, need to realize their strengths within the community. But back to the COVID. However, when we started to advocate, we raised the issue so strongly about the discrimination and among how food has been distributed within the country that one group run by called the Jumbebe Fund came on board and provide 296 packages to the ABAPD. And we have been receiving those packages from, I think, March of this year to this date. We're still receiving packages monthly, which we distributed. However, the strategy was, again, I have 2 years ago, I came into contact with a program called COBO Data System. We had tested COBO where we had, through the ministry, we had mapped the entire Barbuda and some community which deal with, it has GPS, where you can Google map the whole of the person with disability. You can collect all information. So in case of disaster, it also provide a data collection system where you can know how many people with disability in the country, what are the challenges. And that first data set we did, we used just over 100 questions that question the entire system from healthcare to education. And I had introduced that system to the ministry, but was not accepted then. But when we received the food bags, I said to my permanent secretary, Ms. Sharon Stephen, who is a fantastic lady who supported this post also, sat down with me and one of my coworkers called Mr. Andrew Trotman, and we developed a data set. And out of that data set, we mapped the entire country. We mapped all the communities of Antigua and Barbuda. So we can tell you, right down to a street, how much people are living in Antigua with disabilities. Once we come, I can also go on my system as we speak here and show you where everybody's living. We can share their homes, we can share their history, we can share their photo. And we have just recently shared that data set with the National Office of Disaster, where it's going to be used for early warning and evacuation of persons between disaster. This data set was also shared to my good friend Beverly out of Dominica. We got Beverly, who also recently presented to the government of Dominica and is accepted. And this data set has also been accepted as far back as Belize, St. Kitts. Wow. Many of our Caribbean islands has begun to look at COBA data system as the way forward in collecting data. And so Antigua has really brought onto stream this data system that is used in Antigua. You know, what was so good about that data system? We knew that how much persons was having difficulty getting cooking gas, because once the government announced they were shutting down, person with disability could not get a cooking gas. We couldn't. Food, we couldn't find food. Water was the issue. Because what happened, the majority of people could not come out because we have social distancing. There were long lines at the supermarkets, so it was just a shutdown. But so we used that data. We went to the homes and we asked them every question about their challenges. So if Natalie is doing a research, or Christine, and they look at our data set, they can see how COVID-19 has impacted persons with disability over the last months to today, disability. And we're the only island in the Caribbean, and I consider the only island in the Caribbean that can show true data from the beginning of COVID-19 to today, the impact that it has on persons with disabilities. And this was because of advocacy. It was advocacy. And we're using this data right now to create greater awareness on how both national and man-made disaster can impact persons with disabilities, and how governments and associations can better equip themselves to mitigate against this crisis. So in Antigua, as you have seen, Joel, we post all we're doing so people can see. We are presently, myself, Beverly, Kenville, and many other persons, we are on a Zoom platform, which was created by Dr. Glenville Libert of St. Kitts, because we are pushing community-based rehabilitation. Because what we found happen is that our disabled community has been shut down for quite a while. And we realize that if we don't begin to empower them and begin to equip them with the tools to begin to grow wealth, to help themselves, help their families, we're going to continue to live in poverty. And I'm going to be quite frank and on the record to say, not even the leading organization or Disabled People International, North America and the Caribbean was able to mobilize the Caribbean and to create an awareness and this effect. It was ordinary people. It was people who were just concerned. It was people who have something, who wanted to contribute. Because even the leaders within the organization wasn't active as a part of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And
that is something, I when I was even speaking to Christine, that's something that she was saying, yesterday, Christine, when we spoke, that a lot of the work is done by the advocates. They're the ones that and it's so important for you to continuously do the work that you do, because you help create the policies, you help implement the policies, and you help the policymakers, you help keep them accountable of the policies that were created, that were put in place. And that's something that we see in a lot of the smaller islands, like you and in Antigua, you guys have caught on, and you guys are really mobilizing and doing the work that you need to do to get people the help that they need, especially the people that need it the most, which are the persons with disabilities. In Dominica, I know Natalie, they were, it was a little bit slower after COVID, or when COVID, I guess, landed, quote unquote, in terms of getting things off the road, or up and running. But Natalie, I know, like the government, who's also a sponsor of the show, they were able to set a few things in place as it related to the persons living with disabilities in Dominica. Natalie, can you share some of the work that you guys did during COVID, or you've continued to do during COVID?
Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. From the very moment that the first positive case reported in Dominica, at JP took the decision to close the office, because the majority of our staff are persons living with disabilities, and we have our members visiting regularly. So we wanted to protect them, from any eventuality that would have occurred. Then next there was the lockdown, and that was a challenge for many of us, as in all other islands. But many persons with disabilities, I may say, I used to be locked down at homes, because not many of them are visibly in society. They are part of the home, or homeborn. I don't like to use homeborn, but they are indoors 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, how many days a month, and how many days a year. So that part was not new for most of the disability community. However, the that came up was the fact that, yes, we are supposed to practice social distancing, but of course, persons with disabilities have fed. They have to be, they have to get the supplies to ensure that they adhere to the protocols and the guidelines. They need to have the face mask. They need to have the hand sanitizers, etc., etc. And while there was a lot of information being disseminated by authorities in Dominica. There was a particular group of persons that we were concerned about, and that was persons who are deaf and hard of hearing, or we like to say persons with speech and hearing impairment. And we were concerned that this information was not getting to them. Now, the APD had issued a statement and sent a copy to the Ministry of Health that is responsible for, looking after the communities in terms of ensuring that the measures in place are followed. And that was one of the issues that we raised. And eventually, there was a video developed that was meant to assist this group of persons within our community. Also, we were getting a lot of material via other sources, including Disabled Peoples International, and there was a lot of information, very informative information, but we were concerned that persons with disabilities, they are not computer literate, they don't have the devices, they do ICT is very limited in terms of the disability community in Dominica, and this information was not would not have reached them. But one of the materials that we got and which we found was so helpful was one sent by Dr. Floyd Morris talking about things to do for persons with disabilities in time of COVID. And we shared that with the health personnel in Dominica. We shared that with our minister who is responsible for Dominicans with disabilities. And I think, while we were not directly told so, but I think that was used to assist persons with disabilities around the island. The government did not stop its social programs, which included a national employment program in which many of persons with disabilities are part of. They get their little wages from being part of the various activities and projects that are implemented by the government. There's also the public support program, which never stopped. And we also, the government and the various parliamentarians individually provided packages to a number of persons around the island. And when we were able to make contact with our members and other persons with disabilities in Dominica, we discovered that a lot of them, most of them had been assisted. And, it's really pleased my heart. All and ask, how are you doing? How are you coping? They say, we are all right. We have everything. We are, it was really, 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 to my mind, well done. While we as the organization was the direct, tried to, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, because my computer told me my mic is muted. So we were able to, while we were not directly involved in delivering packages or whatever supplies that were available, we know that persons with disabilities were catered for, by the government. And we continue to hear them say that they provide for the needs of persons with disabilities. They are not going to cut any of the social programs that they have been undertaking, and we just hope that we can continue the collaboration that we have with various agencies in government to ensure that persons with disabilities are not left behind.
That's right. That's right. And that's what it's all about. It's all about not being left behind.
That's right.
The entire disability community tends to get left behind in a lot of instances, and that is what a lot of your work is centered around. We've gone way over our time, but we want to give about 5 more minutes or so, to get some feedback from each of you as to how or what is the way forward for you in terms of your work. What is the next plan for you? What do you still have up her sleeve in terms of advocacy? What do you have, or what are you thinking about doing next as it relates to ensuring that the people who don't necessarily have a voice can use you as a vessel to do the work?
So, Bernard, you and I are going to become very good friends because I hear talking about COVID Toolbox, and one of the things that we saw coming out of the experience with COVID was the importance for us to be able to do exactly what you've done, to map the people with disabilities in Jamaica, where they are, what is their situation, what help they have available to them, what access do they have resource, do they have someplace they can go, and when we're evacuating, where are the places that are accessible, how are they going to move from point A to point B. So we began with Caribbean Evacuators International to pull that research together, and we're actually using Kobo, but we didn't know anybody else was doing it. So I'm going to put you on to my statistician who is leading the charge for us to be able to do that, because there has never been a prevalence study done on disabilities in Jamaica, and that is a part of the problem, where we really don't know where the people are and what the needs are. And so we saw that as a priority coming out of this experience, to ensure that governments and entities have enough information for planning, because in our view, we cannot look at persons with disabilities in the middle of a crisis. That has to be decided on before, and things need to be in place. But here's the other thing. When the things are in place, you must communicate that to the community of persons with disabilities, because if you have the systems, but the people don't know, then you have the same experiences of people not being able to access services. So our next is to be able to complete that study so that we can now begin to understand more about what is going on with the community and to feed that information into the different entities.
Wow,
Yes.
that's wonderful, 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 wonderful. I would love to see the collaboration. Y'all didn't even know each other.
No.
Collaborations about to start popping.
Well,
Yeah. Go ahead, Bernard.
collaboration is there with us. I mean, as I said to you, we are on a platform, a Zoom platform weekly, started by Dr. Glenville Liebert out of St. Kitts. One of our big support is Beverly, and out of Dominica.
Yeah.
And we're pushing a process called CBR, community-based rehabilitation, through our metric: health, education, livelihood, social empowerment. In 2016, I had the opportunity of meeting Dr. Liebert in Turks and Caicos, where I was introduced to CBR as an official title. In 2017, I traveled to Ecuador, where I negotiated for Antigua to host the 5th Continental Congress on Community-Based Rehabilitation. And we've been pushing this CBR on the platform. As I said, I'm an advocate. I no longer believe in listening to leaders who just tell good stories. I want to hear people themselves telling their stories. I believe that there's a lot of misinformation that's going around just to protect organization names. I think people with disability need to begin to get involved, begin to own the process, begin to drive data, drive our leaders. As I said previously, we are moving away from a people's movement within the Caribbean to an executive movement where executive people make all the decision. And that has to stop. COVID has taught us about people coming together, changing the narrative where only boardrooms make decisions. We're bringing grassroots people. We're bringing unattached. We're bringing advocates. We don't believe anymore in just listening to the popular names and speaking. I think there's a lot of and I'm not going to use it, going around in the Caribbean when it comes to the disability movement. I think the disability movement in the Caribbean, I think most of all of us are broke. We're not telling the truth. There's a lot of poverty that exists within the communities. I think we have a lot of career advocates who are just trying to make things look good. So we are saying again, we do respect people who were there before us, but we do say there's a new move within the Caribbean. And I'm telling you this, many of the leaders in the Caribbean within the disability movement, they're not supporting ordinary people. They're not supporting the grassroots movement. You will never see them a part of a platform with ordinary people. You will never see them coming out and really supporting these things because they don't want, they always protect their name. And I know, I'm telling you quite frankly, I know because I've been there, I've been a part of the movement, and I'm saying, I am going to be one of the person, and I'm one of the person who are saying, I'm going to continue to advocate to say, people with disability have been lied to in the Caribbean for too long. Let me share something, Joel. The Caribbean is like a mango.
You bring that mango in.
Yes, it's like a mango. And the mango came from a tree. The tree has the owner. The tree has eaten, the owner has eaten so much mango that it become filled. It's time for us as disability people advocate begin to pick the fruits, plant our own seeds so we can share it for new generation. Because mangoes are spoiling and trees and people are not eating because the people who own the trees are not allowing us. And I'm saying this to say, and that
You're not gonna waste that mango.
no, I'm not gonna waste it. I'm not gonna waste it. I'm gonna say this.
Yeah.
Disabled People International, North America and the Caribbean region, your wake-up call is coming. And I'm not saying coming in a negative way, but in a positive way. Because people with disability in the Caribbean deserve better. Deserve better because we have been behind for too long. And this is not because of COVID-19, you know. It's before COVID-19 that we have been fed with lies, make believes. No support is coming, no training in areas. We see no funding. All of us are broke from DPI NAC to the national. We're broke. You know why we're broke? Because we're not doing enough to collaborate. That if enough information is sharing, people are fed up. And I'm sorry, I am saying this. We as disability people in the community, we are coming together and we're saying to you, yes, we do need your support. But let's see if you are willing to come out and support people with disabilities from Jamaica to Barbados to Guyana to Haiti. We're calling on the disability movements to begin to change the way things are done and begin to include people with disability into the decision making. And I know my good friend Natalie Murphy, it's an honor to be on with you today. I mean, I've known her for many years and she has done a lot of work. And this is not to single out anybody, but to say we as the people in the grassroots movement are saying we deserve better. And if you're serious about us, let's see what you're doing to ensure that people with disability are looked after. And Joel, hook me up on Saturdays. We're going to be having a live talk, myself and Louis Herbert. It's called Buck Nostrils, not Buck Nostrils, Nothing Fuss Without Us. And we're going to be having real talks. We're going to be breaking down the walls of the Caribbean. We're going to be planting new seeds.
New mango
Trees. We're going to be planting seeds so new people in the movement can begin to shake those old mango trees and begin to plant the seeds them, because we've been left behind, we've been lied to, we've been forgotten, and we're moving from an executive movement to a people's movement. And I hope that the disability community will respect grassroots advocates and rebuild the base, because the people are suffering, the people are crying, and we no longer going to be listening to the ties and to the smart talks. We are going to be doing it ourselves, and we're asking for your support, or you're going to be against us, because we're going to be against you, because we are standing for what is right.
Yes, thank you very much, Bernard. Natalie, your final words, Natalie? I feel like for all of us, we can just close the show, right, Christine?
Yeah.
I credit, you know, my activism and advocacy in the disability movement to the Disabled Peoples International and Disabled Peoples International North American and Caribbean region. Because had it not been for them who had provided me with the opportunity to learn, to grow, to develop, to participate, to represent them in various forums and conferences around the world, I would not have acquired the skills and the knowledge to be the advocate that I have, that I became in Dominica. While I agree with Dad when he says that we have sort of shifted. The movement was a very vibrant one in the 80s when it was established. In the 90s, we had regional assemblies where we had over hundreds of from the Caribbean participating and attending and, becoming friends and pushing the cause of persons with disabilities. And in those days, there was funding. We depended a lot on external donor agencies to get us together, to bring us together, to undertake and conduct activities. And we did not make enough use of the resources that were available within our islands, within our region, and as I said, depended solely on outside support, mobilizing resources from outside of the Caribbean. A few years ago, we realized that this, and we tried reaching out and being in discussions with the Caribbean Development Bank and other regional financial institutions to assist us, but that has not happened because I know, because I served on DPI NAC for many years, and I know of the activities and the programs that we have undertaken. So one of the issues I think would have to be with funding and not tapping on the resources that we have available within our regional space. However, when it comes to DAPD has always seen the need for it to become sustainable and has always relied on its local community to support its organization, be it the government of Dominica, be it corporations, be it private citizens, and even our own persons with disabilities, with talents, who have talent. We have used these to generate income for ourselves, and I believe that is one of the things that has helped to sustain us. Yeah. And with the work that we have done, we have marketed ourselves, we have been transparent, we have been accountability, and we have been able to attract funding from sources, from government and agencies all over the world. I can name a few. We have received support from UNESCO, 80,000 US dollars for some activities. We have received support from the Japanese grassroots organization who helped to finance the dormitory part of our office. We have received support from the Caribbean Development Bank, Basic Needs Trust Fund, European Union, United States Embassy in Barbados, Canada. In the early days, we had from Canada. We had there was another name that can come to, but we have attract funding from all the agencies. And tomorrow we are going to launch our 24 development program. It's our strategic, social, and personal development program titled Pursuing Social Inclusion, Access, and Equal Opportunities through Advocacy for Persons with Disabilities. And one of the highlights of the on the agenda is the presentation by the International Telecommunications Union of aids, ICT, aids and equipment to us to assist us in our ICT program, because part of this 5-year program, we are going to lay heavy emphasis on persons with disabilities being able to access and use technology. And while we have to provide the training, we realize that these individuals need to have the devices, they need to have the equipment, and these equipment are going to be passing on to our members to ensure that when they have been provided with the training, then they have the devices to practice and to use it. Also, on Friday, the government of Dominica, the Basic Needs Trust Fund, and the Caribbean Development Bank has provided us with a grant of almost $1 million to construct our auditorium. And that is going to begin soon. So while you want to say, well, okay, we have not included persons with disabilities, I cannot say that for my organization, because all the programs that we have implemented, it has had the input of our members. We have organized, we have consultations, we have workshops, we have conferences, we bring them in, we ask them for the ideas, the suggestions, and when this is updated, then we develop, we formulate our 5-year program. We organize annual calendar of events. We have the budget to support it, and then we raise the funds, we mobilize the resources to ensure that the activities and projects are implemented. So I think persons with disabilities in other islands have not really capitalized on the resources that are available within their communities to ensure that the needs of persons with disabilities, that persons with disabilities are more empowered, that they get out of poverty, etc., etc., etc. But I'm hopeful. I mean, it's true that there is a new movement emerging, and I'm glad to see that many more persons are coming on board. Those of us who have been there for how many years, we are tired. We are looking for success, for persons to, for what they call it, people to succeed us. And of course, I wish Bernard very well. I wish Bernard very well, and I am available whenever he is to provide whatever support and assistance that he may require to ensure that we really cater to the needs of persons with disabilities, and that nothing about us without us can really be realized. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Natalie,
very much.
love you. I really appreciate it.
Love you too.
Love you. Can I just say something quickly, Natalie? I must say it's an honor to be on with you. It's a real honor. I mean, collaboration is critical at this time, and to have you on and to really be able to share and partner with you is something that is going forward. Caribbean Joel, thank you very much for having me.
I have no problem in sharing our 5-year plan with you, Bernard, so you can see how we do it. And this is just one plan. We do that for years. We have been doing that for years.
It's all of
so
us.
we have a structure.
We're talking about an entire shift in terms of collective sharing and to really help to groom, because yes, there are good things going on in Dominica. We hear about it, but there are things that other countries are doing we don't know. And then you find that most of the time things are going in a country and it's not shared in a manner that that other groups can participate.
I agree.
The success that Dominica enjoy is quite phenomenal and good. But then it is in a vacuum. It is in a vacuum where we need to really get out together, really bring back a community of love and sharing. And you know, I go as far as saying that I think that most of the leaders within the Caribbean has become so comfortable that they own the process in such a way that they don't want to share it. If you talk too loud, they shut you down. They don't talk to you. They don't want to hear you. And that has become a fundamental crisis within. When you talk about discrimination, discrimination is right within the disability community. People with disability are the one now who are discriminating. It's not society anymore now. It's the people who are skilled enough to hold on to power. The people who are skilled enough to mobilize their colleagues in so to elect them to head. And then what end up and happen? We see 4 years of leadership by certain person within the movement. Now they go on into 8 years of leadership without even really and truly growing the region. And I'm saying this to challenge our regional partners, our regional organizers, to say that they have done I've just resigned as PRO of DPI NAC as a protest of discrimination, as a protest of the bad practice going on within the executive of DPI NAC. And this is not perhaps not the place to talk about it, but the place to talk about it, because discrimination is right within our organization. Natalie is aware of it because she has been around longer than I do. And she is, perhaps there needs to be a greater discussion in terms of how do we as disabled people begin to understand the UN Convention. Are we using it for a tool for our own success? Are we using a tool for our own grandstanding? How are we? The people at the grassroots level, they don't know about it.
Bernard, if I can jump in, I know we're past our time, but if I can jump in, I've been listening. And Natalie, congratulations on the fabulous work that you are doing. I know it's a lot of hard work, a lot of strategy. And I think it's important for other NGOs to hear that there are organizations that are doing well and that not everybody is struggling, but there is a responsibility that we have as advocates to ensure that we are properly equipped. Because when I just started advocacy, I would burst into tears halfway through my presentation and talking about what doesn't exist. Until, Bernard, I recognize that sometimes it is that people don't understand and they don't know what they don't know until they know. So if we as the advocates are not in a position where we can break down the conventions for them, where we are able to understand and to bring practices. I remember I did a special education conference in 2015 when the then Minister of Education kept saying Jamaica is too poor to be able to have the kinds of inclusive practices. But I had as speakers people from India that are showing you what they're doing with dirt and cardboard box to create accessibility. And the minister said, well, if I never sat in this meeting, I wouldn't know. So a part of the responsibility that NEF has taken on is to be a voice and to link policy to practice. We also find that persons with disabilities themselves, because they have been beaten down for so long, their voices are mute. And we're saying to them, you've got to open your mouth and speak. You've got to get it. And we have to also train persons with disabilities. What is a tool? I call it the kryptonite. And the kryptonite is the Convention of Rights for Persons with Disabilities. If your country does not have a policy, because you hold that up and you say, we as a country has signed to this, I will write to the UN if you don't, and you begin to see if policies won't shift. But if we continue to go on the point of just emotions, it won't shift. We also don't want to go on the point of charity where I want this and I want that. But we're saying we need to be included, we need to be supported, we need to be empowered so that we can take our place and we can bring value to the society. So in terms of the narrative that we're going out there with, that must shift. And it needs to be one where we're saying, listen, we're not asking to do this out of pity, but we're asking you to do this because we're viable consumers. So I go to companies and I say, do you know who your customers are? If somebody's brand is in your customer base and there's an issue, how do they access your services? And I find that those conversations are shifting companies to come back to me to say, okay, tell me some more about that because we didn't know. So as we are moving forward in our movement, we've got to make sure that we're standing on a platform that is empowering, that is educating. And the truth is, we know because we live it. They don't because they don't live it. And so we have to be prepared as advocates to help build their awareness and knowledge. I go in even and tell them where new products can be developed so that we can have, so my son can have the access that he needs. So when we're shifting the narrative, we have to understand where we're taking it from a strategic standpoint, and we've got to talk the language so that the organizations are able to understand within in marketing what is in it for me. Because no organization is going to get involved if they can't understand what the bottom line is. And so we have to be able to articulate that, and then we have to be able to back that up with a policy, back that up with a practice. We will train you how to do all of that so that we can increase access.
Well, we have to
And,
first
and,
begin
and,
again.
and that is why it is important that we have a structure in place, that you have a plan. You know what you're going to do from now to, and you don't just get up tomorrow morning and say, oh, I dreamed of something last night and I think I want to do it now. No, that is not how it's done. You have to be properly organized, and you have to be able to defend what you have put forward to authorities, because there are people who will try to block you if you come forward with suggestions and recommendations and projects, and you don't, and when they start questioning that answer, you cannot defend it, then they are just, jokers. But you have to have a structure, you have to have a plan, and follow your plan. Bring in other person. You don't be the chief. You don't be the chief cook and bottle washer. You are the president. You have the PRO. You have the secretary. You have the. At the end of the day, you will be burnt out. You understand? You have to have
And that is
your
why
board of directors in
our
place.
organization, our disability organization, and I'm speaking not about society, but an
Guys, I
internal
know,
crisis that has been out there for too long. Our organization need to begin to look inwards before we can look outwards, because our have been around for quite a number of years. And we have seen when the COVID-19 hit us, our regional organization could not have drive a process that could pull together the Caribbean together. It was Arne who was doing this. It means that the organization is weak. We have some 15, 16 member organization, but there's a platform called Caribbean Disability Movement who are driving the region. That means that our org is not properly organized. And I'm saying this not because I am no longer one of the individuals who is going to go out there to challenge society on the basis of the convention. I'm challenging society, which is us, which all of us would need to begin to go back to back. We have been filled with the joy of all our countries that ratify the UN Convention. Some of us have failed that we have passed policies, but that's it. There's no actual groundwork that is proven that because we get a grant, because we ratify the convention, that people within the depths are actually benefiting. So this is where we have to begin to shift the discussion also. Are people really at the bottom is benefiting? I'm talking about people at the grassroots level. Are they really benefiting from the achievement, which is good? I mean, we have achieved the ratification, which is good. But are the people will be? No. Many of the people within the Caribbean are not benefiting because the agenda is telling people, oh, we don't want charity. You can't say that. You have to say, okay, we need charity for those who need charity. We need support for those who need support. We need to begin to have a discussion and understanding that there are people out there who you have to give charity to. There are people out there who you have to give a scholarship to. There are people out there who you have to give, because this is where we're trying to say, when we do our data collection, we found people with disability, with cerebral palsy, who all they asking for at the moment is a wheelchair. Oh, that's what they're asking for, because that's what they need. There's some person who need a right to go to school. And this is where we have to begin to look at the whole narrative of disability from an individual point. And I think CBR, community-based rehabilitation, again, retool our community.
Bernard, we're out of time. Like we were a whole hour out of time, right? So we need to wrap this up. I really feel that this conversation can continue at another time. I mean, I was able to secure the time for a little bit longer, but we're out of time. And I want to say thank you very much to all three of you for coming on and speaking with us, and sharing your stories with us, sharing the movements that you've been making, what you've been doing in your individual countries as it relates to persons with disabilities, and what you plan on doing moving forward. And I feel like you guys are in a right place. You know what you're about. Every single one of you know what you're about, and you see the deficiencies. You definitely see what needs to be done. You see what is being done, and you know how to affect the change, right? I mean, Claire, Bernard, we know you know how to affect the change. You've kind of given us the blueprint of this evening. And I just want to, commend you guys on the work that you've all been doing, and encourage you guys to continue doing it, because it is a tough job. It sounds like a tough job, especially dealing with your own disabilities like you, Natalie, and Bernard, and Christine having a child, that you have to also be a full-time parent to, so you guys are doing that in addition to your work life and all of that other stuff that comes along with it, and you continue to make movements, you continue to shake, you continue to mobilize, you continue to advocate. And I want to commend all of you and thank you very much for sharing your stories with us here this evening. And I hope that a lot of folks got a message out of this. They were able to understand better, some of the things that you guys are doing, and what you plan to do moving ahead. And I just want to thank you again for that opportunity to come and share with us. And to those of
Thank
you,
you.
thank you. And to those of you who came on and stayed put and did not move a muscle, like some of y'all were been there from the start, some dropped off, but some of y'all saying I ain't going nowhere until y'all done, right? And we really truly appreciate you guys for staying through with us. This was supposed to be an hour-long program, and it's gone on for almost 2 hours. And I want to, say thank you very much to the sponsors, especially to Digicel, who is the platform, the main platform where this is broadcast across 30 countries in the Caribbean. I want to say thank you very much to them for allowing us the opportunity to disseminate this information. It is valuable information, and I hope that the heirs who needed to heard. Hopefully they're not disabled, and that they're able to make the decisions and put policies in place that could be effective as it relates to persons with disabilities, and making sure that, like Christine said something, you use the kryptonite, that they that they are using that kryptonite, and they're getting the work done, the work that they signed on to do, that they're getting it done. Thank you to the sponsors, UNICEF, the government of Dominica, the Achievement Learning Center, as well as Digicel. Thank you very much to Beverly, who's been on the program, Beverly LeBlanc, who's part of the Achievement Learning Center, who was who is, I should say, the one who spearheaded this initiative. So thank you very much to her, for involving me in this, and for including me in this, and for getting all of the guests and mobilizing everyone, and putting this program together. Thank you very much to Fabio and the rest of the gang. This is the final show where we pretty much wrap up in terms of, speaking about what could have, would have, should have been done. And the final show, we're going to be talking on the lessons that we've learned throughout these four programs, and what we hope that can be done moving ahead. Thank you very much, Christine,
Thank
for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Nancy.
you.
And thank you to Bernard. Bernard, I don't know how you have energy after all that work you did today. I don't know how you have all that energy. Thank you very much for your time, and for coming on this program. And to all of the listeners and the viewers, thank you very much for coming on. And those of you who shared the live, who told someone, who tagged someone, if you haven't, you can still do so. They can always come back and look at the program after it's available on Facebook and on YouTube. And I want to say thank you very much to all of you, and have a pleasant evening. Good night.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night to
you.
you. Good night to you, Christine and
Night.
Bernard. Everybody
Night.
else viewing.
Bye, Natalie. Love you.
Bye.
Love you. Keep on the good work.